Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Michael Bunker Radio Podcast Thingy, number 5, if we're keeping count. It is Friday the 27th of January, and it's like something like, I don't know, 1:45. Anyways, I'm here. Been gone for a little while. Had about a week off from doing the radio podcast thingy because, as most of you know, I headed down to Austin to do a couple of events with Forbes West, which was interesting, and we got to spend about 4 days together. He got to come up here to the farm and hang around and see stuff, shoot guns, and eat enchiladas. Man, I got to take a drink. Water it is. Anyway, so yeah, I've been gone for about a week, been doing a lot of things. We finished up Time Looter 2 as of this recording. TL2 is with Todd at Auspicious Apparatus Press, being edited. So hopefully have that out next week. And so that'll be exciting. Just released audiobook for Readout on Audible and Amazon.com. And sent out an email about that, giving away a whole bunch of those, maybe 10 or 20 of those through my email list. Actually, haven't sent it out yet. It's going out in about 15 minutes. But yeah, you can still get maybe a free copy of that audiobook if you are on my email list. And so when you get the email, you have to open the emails. If you don't open my emails, it tells you to do something to get the stuff. So if you don't open the emails, you're not going to get the free stuff. And we've given away like 100 audiobooks in the past week or so, and a bunch of ebooks. So. All right, so I got a long list of stuff to talk about. I put my Facebook post up this morning, and then I've had some come in through email and whatnot. I don't know if I'll get to everything. Probably won't, but we'll see. All right, cues and topics for the Michael Bunker Radio Podcast Thingy. A cooking show. I'm not sure how you would do a cooking show on a podcast. I mean, I could sit here and pretend like I'm cooking, I suppose. Seems like it's best for another medium. All right. Carrie says, talk about dealing with unexpected success as a writer. Remember that success is relative to the person it's happening to. Yeah, that's true. I don't know exactly how to answer the question because I started out as kind of a blogger and traveling and speaking and doing blogs a long time ago, and so when as a writer, I mean I had some popularity as a writer before I ever published a book because of my blogs, and then I published Surviving Off Grid in my blog, and then it became a book, and then it was very popular. And then still I would not have considered that any type of real success, although that book did really, really well. I think probably success, what people would call success, and it is relative, started with the fiction and kind of really took off with Pennsylvania. And it's just been a long, hard bit of work, and it's been very slow and gradual. I never had the kind of huge peak like others have had yet. We'll see. But it's kind of been a very slow, gradual process. I had 200 people on my email list in 2013, maybe something like that, and maybe early 2014. No, probably 2013. And I've got about 4,000 now, but that's been a very gradual. It's picked up a lot of late, but it's been a very gradual thing. And so there, I haven't really had a period. It's kind of like the frog in the hot water thing. I don't think I've had a period where I was, maybe a little bit in 2014, where I was all of a sudden kind of overwhelmed with everything that was going on. It was just very, very gradual. All right, this from Todd Barcelo, who is the publisher at Auspicious Apparatus Press. said, aside from the lack of traditional power sources in the home, e.g. the grid, and the outdoor plumbing bit, what is the most difficult part of living off the grid? It's one of those things where it's not like there are parts very much. Everything's kind of a whole. And so, hauling water, which we had to do a lot when we very first got started, and we don't do as much now, but we still do some, has always been a difficulty and something that nobody really enjoys. And so that's always been a kind of difficult part that everybody kind of notes. You got to haul a lot of water. And the other thing is, constantly maintaining things that are seem to be more automatic. Either that or they're not included in a normal on-grid life. So, watering gardens, watering animals, keeping everything fed and alive, and all of that. It's not a difficulty. It's just something that's constant and never stops. Getting used to vast differences in temperature, and I was talking about this with Forbes when we were together this weekend. That we were designed as humans to undergo a spread of temperatures. We weren't supposed to all be at 72 degrees all the time, or wherever you keep the thermostat. And it's part of our strength as a species if you believe in evolution, and even if you don't. The species is made weaker when it is not stressed at all. And so, one of the things we have to deal with off-grid is, we don't keep a constant temperature and don't even try. Like here at the office, I don't have a fire going right now, and it's probably high 40s or, probably high 40s in here in the office right now. It was down below freezing overnight. My office is very well insulated, but it eventually cools off, and then it takes a long time for it to warm back up. And right now, in fact, I meant to mention that it was kind of sunny when I started a minute ago, and it got cloudy. And I'm hoping that the power doesn't go out. I think I still should be able to record everything with battery power, but anyways, I'm hoping the power doesn't go out. But anyway, so it's kind of cold in here right now. It's not freezing. I mean, I can work. But, I work in temperatures from 30s, in my office, from 30s up to near 100, in the summer. And so that's an adaptation, certainly a difficulty. Nan in Austin says, I really like the cooking show idea. I just, maybe I'm not seeing it. I mean, I'm a great cook, fantastic cook. And maybe you're talking about another medium, like something like TV or something. But doing it on the podcast, I don't know. All right, Malachi, he's in Missouri, says, your favorite part about off-grid living? My favorite part about off-grid living is freedom. And by that I mean I'm not subject to the whims of the market. I'm not subject to the whims of the electrical grid, power grid, just-in-time products and services grid. I can pretty much do whatever I want whenever I want to do it. Although I have obligations that are imposed both through my my faith and through community standards and all of that. But other than that, I'm free to. I'm doing this podcast because I want to do it, not because I'm being forced to do it. And so that's probably my favorite part. It's the freedom. Todd has another question or series of questions. And I don't know if these are ones I've answered in the past either, Todd, but I'll get to them. All right. He says, for many of your followers like myself, I'm sure it can be somewhat easy to forget that it's not just you and your family and the community in which you live. I recall you speaking of and posting about community projects, but not so much about other members of the community. Is that because those folks prefer to stay out of the spotlight, as it were? That's one of the big reasons. Most of them don't want any type of notoriety or notice at all. I do have a neighbor who's an author as well and has a pretty big web presence. And her family, and her husband's one of our elders, and she writes for nourishingdays.com. And she's got a book coming out pretty soon, which is going to be like a mainstream published book. And I think it's on fermented foods. So I mean, she has kind of her level of interaction, but the others, I mean, the Siffords, who are really close friends of ours too, and they have a blog, and they post a lot about their farm life and all those type of things. But I try not to drag them into what I'm doing for a lot of reasons. First of all, it's not really like what they're into, which is good. And I have a wide and diverse audience, very wide and very diverse audience. And so bringing that into somebody else's very very happy, rigid, constructed life is not something I want to do. All right, next question. As a member of a playing community, which I think it's safe for me to assume is self-regulating, self-governing community, are there any rules or regulations that you collectively agree to abide by that outsiders might find odd or difficult? Again, aside from the off-grid aspect. Yeah, I think most of the rules we live by, most people might find odd or difficult because they're how we choose to live. The off-grid aspect is certainly one of them. Our dress is regulated by our Ordnung, which is our rules of dress, and there's a lot of reasons for that. And I think most people who don't know what the rules are and don't know how it works would think that might be odd or difficult. And then we have regulations, about how we deal with issues that might come up with disagreements. We have, and I hate to use the word regulations. It sounds very governmental. We have ways of dealing with things. A lot of these are unwritten, unspoken. It's just everybody understands them or they've been taught on. We have regulations. For example, married, actually any males, adult males, are not permitted to be alone with a woman that's not their spouse, and really vice versa. And that's really just to keep everybody above board and make sure that we're all respectful of our spouses and their feelings, and to put a stop to any rumor mongering or gossip, anything like that. But things like that, I think that those people might find those things odd or difficult, but we find them handy and beneficial and godly, and we are happy with them. Pardon me. I started to cough into the microphone. And I know a bunch of people said my chair squeaks. It's true. I got to get some WD-40. But I'm sorry about that. How would one go about joining your community or one like yours? Does there need to be a familial relationship somewhere within the community to be accepted as a member? No, to the familial thing. Most communities like ours, of course, are faith-based or religious communities, have a system or a understanding and statement of faith or of doctrines that they would want you to be in agreement with, because for your good and for theirs. I mean, the scripture says, can two walk together if they be not agreed? And although we don't require adherence to our statement of faith for someone to move nearby, they could live across the road and be friends and participate at some level, and that kind of thing, just like any other neighbor. And but actually, to be part of our close communion fellowship community, then yeah, you have to adhere to our statement of faith and submit, as like everyone else does, to the rules and to the eldership, and agree to be regulated. I hate the term regulated. To live. That's what I mean. We live a certain way, and that's why we're happy with how we live, and we want anybody that does want to join with us in communion to be like-minded and to live in that way. And so anybody, of course, like I said, is welcome to buy the property across the road or down the road or a block away, or we don't have blocks, but not far away, and come by. And a lot of our fellowships are open fellowships, so people can come visit and hang out, work with us, whatever. But that's the answer to that question. Chad says, serious question. Bum, bum, bum. Is it okay to punch a Nazi? Follow up. Is it okay to laugh if someone else does? Is it okay to punch a Nazi? I would have to have more. I know that there's an incident recently that's being brought up here. But to answer the question, literally, I would want to know the circumstances. Certainly, in World War II, during a declared war, or operating on behalf of the government in a action against Nazi Germany, I'm sure there was, and there was a lot of punching going on. And I suppose if that's your field and your belief system, then it would be okay. You know, I think it was probably a good idea to punch as many Nazis as you could while you were in a war against them. If you believe in war, then that's part of it. Is it okay to punch a Nazi? And I think we're talking about this Richard Spencer alt-right guy that was punched. Absolutely not. Absolutely not. And there's many different levels of this. And I kind of watched. I saw what happened. Then I watched on Twitter and Facebook as people who should know better, reasonable, what we would hope would be reasonable people, were defending it because they say he's a Nazi. There's a lot of problems with that, and it's a part of the really extreme neoliberalism, or whatever you want to call progressivism, that's out there today. If some of you will remember, and most people are so profoundly ignorant of both the foundational ideas and concepts of America, and are ignorant of history, that it's almost ridiculous. It's almost impossible to even talk to them. But many of you will remember that it was Jewish liberal attorneys that defended and protected the right for the KKK and neo-Nazi groups to march in Skokie, Illinois. And they did so for a very important reason, and that is that they understood an important concept that most Americans on both sides have forgotten, to their own detriment and to their own eventual destruction as a people. And that is that you don't want to inculcate into any system of government or of life a mechanism that will inevitably be used against you to your own detriment and destruction. And this is why people are really so profoundly ignorant. And I mean, this is something about which people are so profoundly ignorant. And so the liberal Jews, and these are traditional liberals who defended the KKK and have defended the KKK in lawsuits and for marching in cities and neo-Nazi groups, do so because they highly regard the principle established that freedom of speech is not designed to protect speech that everyone agrees with, or even that a majority of the people agree with, or even that a lot of people agree with. It's designed to protect the most vile, the most offensive speech. And so the system was really brilliantly set up where actions that are criminal are that harm people or property and things are crimes. So actions are outlawed. Certain actions are outlawed. You can't go around acting against ideas and thoughts. And I already know the argument where you're going to go, and I'm going to get there in just a minute, but just hang with me. You can't outlaw emotions or thoughts, because the mechanism that you create to do that will eventually be turned against you. And it hasn't happened in some cases, and it has in others, but it will eventually happen. History proves it, and logic proves it. Because we don't live in a static society that, as some believe, that is moving in one direction and only continues in a very even playing in that direction. It seesaws back and forth. It's a pendulum, and eventually you will be out of the majority and you will be out of power. And what we're seeing is happening now is the extreme left and the extreme right, shrill and juvenile, do things while they're in power, and then they regret those things or scream and cry and whine when those mechanisms that they've created or patterns that they've created are then used against them. And so then the question is, what happens when you make laws, as Europe has done, and Europe is reaping the whirlwind even now, and it will even be worse. When you make laws that outlaw heinous ideas as a reaction against an event or a historical event or something, is that you eventually you ingrain in the system or in the law the idea that what is offensive to the culture can be silenced and outlawed. And then all it takes is a huge swing in popularity, major unseen events, or manipulations by powers, monetary and fiscal powers, and political and economic powers that swing the ideological pendulum in the other way, and then you are the laws are changed using the same pattern, and the mechanism is kept as a precedent, and then it's used against you. And so this is what's happening. And so someone says, well, you shouldn't punch anybody. We should have freedom of speech, but he's a Nazi. And so we use force to stop Nazis. I think Forbes said this, and it's real. And I like Forbes a lot, but it's not only logically fallacious, but it's dangerous. We use force to stop the Nazis in Europe, and force needs to be used against Nazis because they will not stop on their own, and therefore punching a Nazi on the street who is exercising his free speech is perfectly okay. Ha ha ha! Let's all do it. And I haven't even got to all the problems with this, other than that you are creating a system by which you are going to be beaten, and your family is going to be beaten, or your offspring, or your progeny are going to be beaten for what they believe. But the problem is, first, that we have seen recently, not even recently, it's been going on for some time, but most notably in the last year or two, the term Nazi and Hitler used to describe anybody that disagrees with the left, and just as we saw the term communism and communist used to describe anybody on the right, and these extreme terms are bandied about. And I didn't finish the last thought, and that is, yes, we use violence to stop Nazis in Germany, but that we declared a war to do so. And those individual rights don't apply when you have invaded other countries and you are making war against someone. At the end of a war, there is a treaty or a peace announcement, and reparations are made, and punishments are meted out, and people lose territory, and people are executed, and people are put on trial. And then we move on, and what we don't do or should not do is then plant within the system a mechanism that will then be used against us when that ideology, for one reason or another, even if it's a reaction to a contrary ideology, becomes the majority. And that's what's wrong really with democracy. I can get to that on another day. But and so, first of all, we did use violence, but we declared war. There was a system that was used to explain and to permit the violence. And once the war was over, we ceased hostilities, and then the law took over. The second problem is that, as I started to mention, is that we've created a system now where anybody can call anybody a Nazi or Hitler or a communist or a Stalinist or a Leninist because they don't agree with them. And if you create a mechanism or even the idea, or it's law enforcement looks the other way, or it's an acceptable social practice to punch somebody who is a Nazi, then of course that even encourages the labeling of people. And we just saw Trump get elected, not for the reasons most people suppose, but one of the primary reasons was because, and this has been admitted to by so many prominent liberal comedians, spokesmen, bloggers, even some of the most prominent ones. And one of the primary reasons was because the extreme left, and so many of them in neoliberalism, have belittled, demeaned, name-called, and attacked other people who are not Nazis and not Hitler and not racist and not misogynist by those terms, and used those terms so loosely and without any definition that now that it's just common. If you disagree with somebody, you're called a racist, misogynist, homophobic, Nazi. And so you add these things together, you have a mechanism or a social acceptance of violence against people of a certain viewpoint, and then you just start labeling everybody you don't like with that viewpoint, and then we just got people getting punched, and then we have, and I'll get to the most important reason why you shouldn't do that, or you shouldn't think it's okay, is because there will be a reaction to that, and that reaction will be violent, and it will be against you, and it will be against your family, and it's inevitable. And this is one of the reasons for the rise of Nazism in Germany, was a reaction against the activity of communists in, my wife's walking up, communists in Germany. I'm on the radio show. Go ahead and come in. Go ahead.
Well, I wanted to talk to you, so.
Well, you can't right now.
I know, that's why I was like.
But you're on there now.
That's okay.
Okay, what do you need though? I got a short list.
I was just going to talk to you about just the animal care.
All right, well, can we do that later?
Yeah, that's why I.
Are you going to town?
I have to go pick up Jennifer at 4:30.
Here. Pardon the ripping of paper. All right, I'll get.
Which radio show you on?
It's my podcast thing.
Oh. Okay.
This is Danielle. She say hi.
Hi.
All right, I'll go back to what I was doing.
Okay.
Means you got to get out.
Gladly.
Dirty looks. So, anyways, wherever I was, you create a mechanism to use violence against your opponents, and then you label them whatever you want to label them. Now, in particular, I have a problem in this particular case with this Richard Spencer, because much of what he has said and believes is horribly offensive to a lot of people, and yet the same people who say that you must accept somebody based on how they self-identify, that you cannot just label somebody based on your own opinion, but you must label them based on how they self-identify, are calling this guy a Nazi, even though he himself says he's not a Nazi. And so that there's another problem there. And so you have this idea now, because there's an extremist, and I can name people just as extreme on the left, whose ideas tend to an ideology that is just as violent, actually more so, if you want to count 30 million starved in the Ukraine under Stalinism, 100 million if you want to count Chinese communists and Russian gulags and all of that. And you have communists in America, and some of them I know, and some of them are Marxist, that are friends of mine. And I absolutely defend their right to speak, although I can very easily connect the dots between their ideology and the murder and starvation, rape, torture, etc. of over 100 million people. And yet I don't think it's okay to punch them in the head while they're using their free speech, even if I vitriolically hate their opinion. And so, and then is it okay to laugh at it? I don't think it's even okay to laugh at it. I really don't. I don't think people realize what they're doing. And as I was mentioning before my wife came in, the reaction is the problem. The reaction to it is the problem. What happened in Nazi Germany was that you had this very tiny party that had no supporters and was a very, very extreme, a nationalist party. And then you had a reaction to that amongst liberals and communists. And their reaction was so extreme that millions upon millions of otherwise reasonable people were driven into an ideology they would not otherwise have embraced. And in America, in 2016, you have, in 2017, you have the same thing going on. You have I always say, if somebody's busy destroying themselves based on their stupidity and idiotic things, just get out of the way and let them do it. You know, it's perfectly okay to not know and to not react. And I'll get to some of the arguments about, resistance and all this kind of stuff. But you had people who never in their life, who didn't like Trump, would not support Trump, but who were out there every day, day after day, being called names, being belittled in the news, and being degraded as humans because they lost their insurance, they can't afford to pay their bills, companies moved out, factories closed, and because of that, they're supporting a political party that for whatever reason they haven't supported in the past, but they believe is most likely to bring their jobs back or do something. I don't know what the reasons are. I didn't vote for Trump. I didn't vote for Hillary. But then these people are being labeled, and I'm reading on Facebook these long, twisted, illogical posts that say, no, if you support Trump, you are supporting everything he says. You are supporting everything he believes. And then, of course, there's a twisting of the things that he says and the things that he believes beyond all recognition, and to the point where now you are rapist, whatever. And that is what got the man elected. That is what got the man elected. And as somebody who is non-political, who doesn't participate in your political system, but who is a historian of reasonable mind, I just want to warn you all to be so careful about the stupidity that you're involved in. And this idea now that free speech is only for the things that you agree with, and that free speech is in certain cases that you enumerate can be violently shut down because of historical events that are wildly different than both you understand and those that are going on today, that are not rooted in the same thing and are not equals, because you've been convinced that some guy with virtually no followers who happen to be covered by the media for political reasons is the spearhead of some huge movement, that we're now going to start using violence against people with which we disagree. And you really, really need to consider it, because you will cause the thing that you fear the most. You will cause it. And you will cause people who never, ever, 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 ever would have been involved in any of that stuff, but who now fear for their life. They fear for their future. They fear for their jobs. They fear for being punched in the head for an opinion. You will cause those people to react violently and to join with other people with whom they would not normally disagree, and the bloodshed will be enormous. So no, it's not okay to punch a Nazi unless there's a war, or unless that Nazis engaged in actual violence. Now, I wanted to say that this is not something that I'm just saying based on this one event. I have seen this tendency on both sides, but really, really, really emphasized in the left. And even an author, very popular author, who I was friends with but am not now, who told me plainly that the fundamental tenets of my faith are equal. So this is what you do. You take a thing you don't like, you equate it with something that is horrible and that should be resisted, and then when you equate those things, even though they're not at all equal, then you attribute what you should do to the second thing to the first thing. So he equated some of the basic tenets of my faith that he doesn't like, that he's violently opposed to, and I mean violently seriously, to rape, and then said, we allow people to violently stop a rape, and so they ought to be able to violently stop people like you who believe like you believe from believing what you believe. Told me that directly. And that is an appalling, wicked, dangerous game to play and system. And I see it on Facebook. I see it on Twitter every day. I see it some on both sides, but it has become almost a central tenet now of the most extreme elements of the neoliberal progressive left. And that is, find something you don't like, equate it with something horrible, even if you actually believe it's equitable with those things or equal to those things, and then acknowledge and encourage and incite violence. And so, what will happen is when the reaction comes, like it did in 2016, and you lose elections, and you overreact, and you lose the next election even worse, and then the radicals of that extreme belief system are the ones writing the laws, and those are the ones that who are naming the judges, are going to pass laws that do the exact same thing to you. And this is what we're seeing over the last 50 years in America. It's been a growing trend. Whoever's in power violates freedoms, violates rights, and then and rationalizes doing it. And then when the next party gets in, they do the exact damn same thing, and they say, well, you did it first. And they charge you with hypocrisy, even though that now they are doing the same thing. The other side screams and whines and says, oh, look what you're doing, even though they did the exact same thing. And then the next thing is more extreme, and the next thing is more extreme, and now we end up where we are. All right. And here's the thing. Is I love to laugh. I love to make jokes. I like to make fun of lefties and righties and the extremes. But when I see some violence used against somebody who's not engaged in violence, who's not engaged in committing a crime, who whatever they are, I don't care if it's Charles Manson. I don't condone it, and I don't think it's funny. All right, Sarah says Black Bloc, which I didn't know what that was. I said, I don't know what that is. And she said, it's an anarchist tactic, anonymous confrontational force responsible for punching Richard Spencer in the face and breaking some windows during the inauguration. Believe peaceful protest gains nothing and that true action entails destruction and violence. Of course, I'd be tremendously against that. And I don't believe that's an anarchist tactic. I don't believe that for a minute. Here's one of the things that a lot of people don't understand about what's going on in the world today and what's been going on for the last 50 or 60 years, and actually going back further than that. I encourage everybody to read Malcolm X's autobiography. And in it, he acknowledges that when he was with the Nation of Islam, them and the KKK met together with the CIA and planned events. And this is something that happens. It's not just false flag attacks, but it has become very common, especially in the Soros age, to hire agitators to interrupt events, even bringing violence. And I see both sides admit this, but they don't admit that their side's doing it. You know? And so, like, while there was violence at the Trump events, Trump supporters punching other protesters and vice versa, people on Facebook who are radicalized would say, oh, that they hired their own guy to punch their own guy. And, I applaud them for thinking that that's an option. But they never think that that happens when it happens on their side. It's always that other side that's doing it. And what you have to realize is when you've successfully created a binary system of really extreme, ignorant people on both sides who will react to whatever they see, fake news, they react to emotion, they react to mainstream news sources putting out fake news, they react to idiotic and illogical Facebook posts that are completely manipulated by propaganda mills, paid for by billionaires on both sides. The easiest thing in the world to manipulate is a binary democratic system, because and this is why it's hilarious and crazy and scary that after the election, so many people on the left were calling for into the Electoral College, because what they will end up with is exactly the opposite of what they want, and that is they will have handed 100% of the power in this country to the oligarchs and to the media and the billionaires who are able to control them by buying opinions. And so, but what happens is that the more restraints you pull off from the system to where you go into a direct democracy, the more the people who control all of it, and I mean all of it. I mean, have you ever asked yourself, just ask yourself, if perhaps your ideological bent is being manipulated for people who claim to support you, but who serve the interest of a third party? Because if you haven't thought about that, then you're way behind the curve. And so, we see a straight line of events regardless of who's in office. And we see Patriot Act and Guantanamo and all that stuff happening during Bush, and everybody's outraged on the left. A lot of us who are not on the left or the right were outraged. A lot of libertarians were outraged. A lot of people on the right were outraged. And then as soon as the left gets in power, we got Patriot Act 2, we got more, still got Guantanamo, we got more stuff going on, we got media being charged and bullied, we got media people being hassled by the IRS. I mean, I'm talking about AP people, Washington Post people. You got all kinds of bullying of the media go on, and everybody is offended and everybody's upset about that. You got people using the IRS to investigate the other side, and then they're out of office, and then the other side does the exact same thing, and then the other side is screaming that they're doing it and don't realize the same thing was going on 8 years ago, and it's going on again today, and reasonable people were against it both times. And so I'm going to boil down this whole last section. You're all getting played. You are all absolutely getting played. This whole left-right thing, you are being manipulated into an emotional reaction. I made a post about it today. Someone had posted this thing. It's like how to create a Hitler. And basically it purports to be a list of things that Hitler did in order, and it's not. It's not even close. It's not even close. And then what you do if you want to create one of these is you go, how to create Hitler, how to create Stalin, how to create communism, how to create fascism, how to create Stalinism, whatever. And you just make a list. And the first thing you do is the first two things are the most important. The first two things you list. They don't have to be in the order in which those things historically happened. Just name two things. Okay, silence the media. That's number one. Silence scientists. All they have to do is be easily relatable to the people you're trying to manipulate, so that in their minds they can go, that's what's happening right now. Even if they're playing very fast and loose with the facts. And so, for example, when Obama came into office, he made a speech where he actually used the term redistribute, and people lost their minds. And he said, people pay their fair share, and this was a big Hillary thing too. And to the right, those things are, bam, those things, that's communism. That's communism right there. And so they equate that to confiscating the wealth, which they can then say, okay, step one to creating a communist country out of America, or Stalinism, or whatever, is that you want to confiscate the wealth. Everybody who already thinks that that's what's happening, even though it didn't happen in the way that it happened in Soviet Russia, is immediately going, that's what's going on right now. And then, step two, silence the media. Well, there's a whole laundry list of stuff that the Obama administration did in 2008, and that Trump administration is doing now, and the Bush administration did, and that is to come out during press conferences and basically denounce or talk bad about news articles you don't like, to use the arms of government and the power of the government, the Freedom of Information Act denials, etc., to bully or threaten or silence or whatever the media. Every administration's done it, and it's happening again right now. There are more Freedom of Information Act requests denied in the last 8 years than in history. But that's just because they don't come back and tell you that's because during the Obama administration there were right-wing groups that were constant judicial watch and others that were constantly all day long sending hundreds of Freedom of Information Act requests. And so since nobody's actually looking for the facts about what's actually going on the left or the right, they just look at that and go, oh, they're trying to silence the media. That's what they're doing. And so you say, okay, these are the steps. Confiscate wealth, silence the media, and then you just put a grocery list of things that you think that they're going to do based on what they've said they're going to do, that you can then use some type of connotation to make it think that that's what's going to happen next. And then this is your list. And then you put, we're already on step 2, folks. We're already there. And there are lists like this that exist that went out, right after Obama got elected, telling us that we were on the steps to communism, we were on the steps to violent Bolshevikian revolution, and it's going on right now with Trump. And people don't know any better. Because one thing, they don't know history, and number 2, they don't know the reality that the thing that's on that list is being manipulated to make you think that that's what's happening. And since they don't know, they're not willing to admit that they don't know and not react, and their reaction is used by other people to manipulate an agenda and to get people to act. And eventually that act is in resistance or violence. This happens on both sides, and so I'm totally against all of that. And my encapsulation of everything I just said is: don't get played. Don't get driven into violence and destruction because of your emotional makeup or because of your ignorance of history. Ignorance is not a pejorative. Doesn't mean that you're a bad person. It just means you don't know something. You need to read more and you need to study more. All right. Next question. Why we love toilet paper? I don't know who the we is. I mean, why we as humans? Why we off-gridders? We love toilet paper because it's handy, and I mean that literally. It keeps us from using our hand or something less messy and easy to use. Or messy and hard to use. I actually would desire that there was more non-bleached toilet paper. I know there is some. I think you can get some. I don't know if any of it's plush or anything, but it's just easy. And I think that it's just kind of like everything else in America, really. We want stuff that's easy. And so, I mean, people wipe their butts for a long time before toilet paper was ever invented. And we'll do so again. We'll do so again. All right. Howard Jett says, John 8:44, the book of John in the Bible, verse 8:44, talks of Satan being a murderer from the beginning. When was this beginning, or was he ever good? This term from the beginning in John 8:44, this was in a discussion where Jesus was talking to the Jews that were in power, the Pharisees, etc., and he was accusing them of being liars and manipulators, and so he said, "You are of your father," and he says Satan was a murderer from the beginning. This is not from the beginning of all creation, or and even according to most of the best commentators, this means from the beginning of the interaction between Satan and humans, which is the context of what we're being told here. That Satan was the murderer of Adam and Eve. He was, through his manipulations. They were told that on the day they eat thereof, they will surely die, and this die meaning a spiritual death that will come upon them and all their progeny. And this certainly did come to pass. They also day being 1,000 years prophetically in the scripture, died within the first day at 900 and some years old. And so, but he was a murderer from the beginning, in the fact that he was coveting and hate and had hate against God and against humans. The scripture tells us that if you have that if you're angry or have hate in your heart against someone without cause, that you have murdered them. This is a teaching of Jesus, and that murder is in your heart. And certainly it takes that type of covetousness and hate to do what Satan did from the beginning. Was Satan ever good? He certainly was created without this propensity. And in that state, he was either in a moral equilibrium, or he was good, just as God called man good before the fall, meaning that he was what he was created to be. He was good in God's eyes. As far as his crime, we don't know the details, what his crime was before the events we find in Genesis. And there are a lot of different opinions on that. But from the beginning, which means from the beginning of its interaction that is recorded for us on the earth, he was a murderer. He was a murderer first in his disposition of anger and hatred towards God and towards man. He was a murderer in his behavior and covetousness in causing and beguiling the woman and the man to sin against God and to bring death. He certainly was a murderer and participated in the first real murder in convincing Cain to slay Abel. And the scriptures say that he's been a motivation or behind every murder since then, and the whole idea and concept of murder. So that's why he's been a murderer from the beginning. And there was a time, however short it was, could have been the first day, where he was not fallen. There was a time before he was fallen. All right. Okay, other countries that you have considered to live in. I was in Australia for a while, and I really, really enjoyed it. I wouldn't say that I considered living there, but I thought it would be nice. I mean, you think about it, that kind of stuff, when you're in another country. I certainly don't like a lot of the laws. I really did like Western Australia, and I could live there and would certainly be happy there. I love Texas, so I've never considered living out of my country, which is Texas. The only other one would be Mississippi. I considered living in Mississippi, which is outside of my country. And that's about it. Back in the day, I could live in Spain. I could live just about anywhere, but I like to live in Texas. All right, Jan says, "How's the guest cabin coming along?" It's not really yet. It's on the list, but it's way down the list. We're really trying to work on our water project right now and get that going. And so the fundraiser's still going, and we'll be bringing that up again soon. But the end product of a lot of the infrastructure we're doing is we want to get this guest cabin built so that people can come and visit. So I talked a little bit about my trip with Forbes, and that was fun. Enjoyed it. Time Leader 2 coming out next week, and I'm excited about that. It's really, really funny. Official author is Vincent Cooper, but it's really funny. And Time Leader 1 is doing well. It will do better as more and more of the parts come out. This is all Season 1 that we're writing on. Season 1 will have a complete arc. And so I know a lot of people are waiting until all 4 of the first episodes are out, which would be Season 1. But we're really enjoying it. And it's really kind of taken off now. People are going to really laugh at Episode 2 of Season 1. So Time Leader 1 is out there right now. You can get it on ebook. You can get it in audiobook. And Time Leader 2 will be out. Not audiobook. You can get it in ebook and you can get it in paperback. Time Leader 1. Time Leader 2 will be out next week. And it will be out in ebook, and it will be out in paperback as well. Followed hopefully very quickly by Time Looter 3, which will be the third of 4 in Season 1 of Time Looter. All right, so get your questions in, guys. You can always, make your post when I post the thing on Facebook about questions and all of that. You can also Facebook message them to me. If you're my friend on Facebook. If you're not my friend on Facebook, you should be. You can find me at facebook.com/offgrid. You can also email me anytime if you want to, bunker2k@hotmail.com. And you could also, if you want to, put comments on this YouTube video and ask a question there. I do approve the comments before they get posted. So just so you know. All right. I don't know I think I had more questions that I didn't get to, but I got into a long rant. And so let me know what you guys think. Subscribe to this YouTube channel. That way you'll get alerts every time there's a new Dilly Whopper out. And I'll talk to you all soon. Bye-bye.